Hey everyone, it's Tori with Fox and Hazel, and I am showing you guys today how to make two different Christmas cards using the same stencil from StencilGirl. So this is the Peace stencil by Kathy Nichols. There'll be a link in the description box if you want to get your hands on it. And so what I'm using today is a set of 5x7 craft note cards I just got at my local craft store. If you can't find them, you could always buy just craft paper and cut them yourself if you feel so inclined. And so what I'm doing first is I'm just using a makeup sponge because I'm cheap and I don't want to pay for like fancy craft sponges, and some white gesso, and I'm just stenciling the stencil onto the card using white gesso so that it'll be a craft background with white imagery or like a white design. And I find that with this I had to do two coats just because the gesso isn't quite as thick or as opaque as I wanted it to be. You could use gesso with two coats. I have used other just white acrylic paints that are like professional grade white acrylic that seem to have a better coverage because they're heavy body or they have more pigment, and that might have been a better choice. I don't know. I'm also not very good at stenciling. I always seem to have seepage or like leaks under the edges of my stencils because I'm probably not as slow and meticulous as I should be, I guess. But so maybe a heavy body wouldn't work great, who knows. Anyways, you could try it with gesso or with white acrylic paint. If you have a preference for one or the other, let me know in the comments. I'm always keen to glean new information about stencils and materials that work great together. So yeah, as you can see here, I had a little bit of bleed through on the wings, but there you go, it's stenciled. So I'm gonna set that aside to dry, and then on the second card, I'm just gonna grab a big wide paintbrush and just do a quick sort of brushy coat of gesso to create a sealed surface for the next card, which we'll be using watercolors on. So we don't want to use it straight on the craft cardstock for two reasons. One being that it's not absorbent, or I guess it's too absorbent, that it would just instantly soak up the paint and then it wouldn't really spread very nicely. And two, it wouldn't show up because it's too dark of a background. So I'm going to set that one aside to dry, and now my stenciled image one is dry, and I'm going to grab my microns. You could use whatever black pen you have. I just happen to have microns, and I'm using a 101 size, so quite a fine tip one to go through. And what I'll do is I'm going to zoom in here, and I apologize, I did this and then I realized after I filmed it that maybe you can't see the best because my hand's kind of in the way most of the time. But what I did is I'm just using that stencil as a guideline to sort of add doodly details to all of the images that came through on the stencil. And so it's kind of a nice Christmassy. It's got, you know, bows of, you know, pine needles and branches and, you know, Christmas ornament and a little Christmas bird. And so, yeah, just go through with whatever fine tip black pen you have and just add details in. It doesn't have to be perfect. Mine sure aren't. Mine are very doodly and scribbly, and I kind of like that. I think it adds to this sort of folk art kind of feel to it. The stencil itself kind of evokes that feeling, and so I thought that using more of a doodly, probably just more like, I don't know, appropriate term, but doodly kind of drawing style I thought would be more appropriate and would suit it better. And so you can see as I'm filming this, not right now, but I had to switch my micron out with another one for a couple of times. I find that microns are hit and miss with writing on top of acrylic paint. I think this one was kind of okay because it was a really thin layer of gesso, and also it kind of was on and off the cardstock in the background. I've used microns on just acrylic in the past, and I don't know what it is about it, but they don't play well together. So, I mean, I've used other black pens too. I just grabbed these and then I had sort of forgotten about it, and so then kind of got frustrated and kept switching it out. And then I think I actually ended up grabbing a 02 pen instead because both my 01s decided to give up and not want to write anymore. So if you know of any other fine tip black pens that are like a felt tip, like I have paint markers, but they're not fine tip enough for me. in some scenarios. Like I have the Uni Posca ones, but they're still not quite as fine as this. So if you have any pens that you love that work great, that are like waterproof, that work on acrylic, let me know in the comments. I need to know. Share with me your wisdom. And so yeah, I guess you guys just get to watch me doodle for a bit. Oh, this is when I was switching up my pens because I was all frustrated and got the next size up. So, but yeah, so I have a question for you guys too, is what kind of Christmas cards does everybody send out? I'd love to know in the comments. After I had kids, I started doing the, printed photo ones, and you go on your website and you put your photo in, and then it adds it to like a cute card design, and then you pay way too much money to get them printed on like nice card stock and everything. And I was doing that because we used to get family photos done every year, and then we didn't get them done for a couple years. And so I was like, well, we don't have a current family photo, so I'm not gonna use an old one. And so I started making my Christmas cards, and I actually really like doing the handmade cards. And now my kids, my two oldest, are in school, and so I've just done like family photos, or sorry, school photos in with the Christmas cards. I think that's kind of a happy compromise. Everyone gets to see the yearly update of what everyone, well, at least two of my kids, I guess, look like, and then I get to kind of make the cards and also save some dollars, because those printed photo ones are so expensive. Does anyone here like religiously order them, or am I just stingy? Because I always end up paying, like, maybe it's because I'm in Canada too, so the shipping is really high, and the dollar conversion, it doesn't work in my favor. It ends up being about 25% more, and then I have to pay an exorbitant amount of shipping on top, so maybe that's why it doesn't work out. Anyways, I digress. This is a good option if you're not the photo printer or photo card printing type. If you're into like handmade cards, this is like a really quick and easy way to do it. I also did a few of these, and I stenciled them all at the same time. And then I actually, while I was watching TV one night, sat down and like doodled, and it was like really relaxing. It's kind of like doing Zentangle, I guess. So anyways, that one is done. Ta-da! See, easy, super quick. And so the next card, what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna use a resist technique using embossing. And so I've taped down my stencil. Also, I recommend that if you're doing stuff like this, 100% tape down your stencil, because then you're not worried about it slipping and sliding all over the place, which is forever my problem. So anyway, so I'm getting another makeup sponge, and I'm using this is a Versamark watermark stamp pad, but it's any embossing stamp pad you have. It's like an oily clear ink, sorry. And so I'm just going through and I am stenciling that all through my stencil. And I find that you'll see I had to kind of go through and like double check my stencil a bunch of times because it's stenciling clear on white, so I had a hard time remembering and seeing exactly where I had stenciled. And so the beauty of having your stencil taped down is that you can lift one side and check it, and then if you've missed a spot, just very carefully like lay the stencil back down the way that it came up. If you don't pull the tape up, you can see I kind of just dropped it and let it fall where it may, and then you can fill in any spots that you missed. And I find this technique works really good, and I didn't have any smudging or, mis-stenciled areas, if you will. And so you want to make sure it's really thorough. You've got all the spots you want and need, and then you're going to use, I used white embossing powder. You could also try it with clear. I realized after that clear might be kind of cool to use too. It would also be kind of fun if you're, instead of using white gesso, if you used something different, I guess, like another light colored another light colored paint. That's the word I'm looking for. You could also try it in different colors. Like you could do it in gold or silver if you wanted to get a little bit more fancy, but I like the idea of the white with the watercolor. So if you haven't done embossing before, a great tip is to use a folded piece of paper to catch all your extra powder so that you can pour it back into your little teeny tiny jar. And I'm just grabbing a soft paintbrush just to brush off the extra bits of embossing powder, because anywhere it'll sit, once you heat it, it will melt and stick there. If it's on the white, if you have like little bits on the white part, it's fine because it'll kind of go with the style when you do the embossing. But if it's on the cardstock, the craft part, then make sure you brush it all off. And so I've run off to where my heat gun is and embossed it and heated it up, and it's melted it, and so now it's all nice and white and shiny. And I'm very carefully putting away all my embossing powder so I don't spill it everywhere. And then the set of watercolors I'm using here is, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but it's the Kiritaki set. They're really popular. You can get them on like Amazon, and I'll have links to everything below. And I'm just using good old red and green Christmas colors to go through and use it to watercolor the background. And it's cool because the embossing is plastic, essentially, is what it is. It resists the watercolor, and you get this really cool resist technique from it. I really like it. You kind of have to figure it out and play with it to see how much water and how much paint, because if you actually use too much paint in a resist, it will stick to the whatever your resist medium is. So if it's like wax, or in this case embossing, if you use too much paint in it, it will stick to it. You're really using the water quality to repel it from the embossed areas. So yeah, you just go through and take your little paintbrush there and add your colors as you will. I did red and green. You could do any other color combo, like Christmassy combo. Like if you could do, ooh, if you had like silver watercolor, like my palette has silver, I think if you did like silver and blue, that would be really cool. Very Christmassy too. I went with like the really classic ones. Or if you did like white and then did like a gold watercolor, if you have a Finitech watercolor palette, or even the Kiritaki, I think it's like Starry Nights. I don't know if that's true. I think if you had that palette, you could use all the metallic watercolors. That would be a really cool effect too. So yeah, like I said, you just want to make sure that you get the right balance of water to paint. You can see in some of my areas, I had too much paint, and so it wanted to just sit on top of the embossed area. So I'm using my brush. I used my brush to pull away some of the paint and the water so that I could see that white, because I really wanted it to shine through. So yeah, you can see here I'm just pulling it all away because I've put too much paint on there. Story of my life, I always have too much paint on everything, including my hands and my pants and my desk and my hair. Anyone else ever get paint in their hair like every time? I don't know what it is. I know, like my nails, I don't get manicures because my nails always have paint, but my hair, I don't know how it gets there. I put my hair in a bun on the top of my head, and yet somehow I wind up with paint in my hair. Story of my life. So anyways, I digress again. So what I'm doing here is I'm now using the, I was going to do copper, but then decided to use the gold. I'm just mixing up the gold watercolor, and then I'm going to splatter it on top of the background here. And you could do this, and then while it's still wet, just go through and pick up any paint on top of the embossed areas if you don't want it there. I think I wipe it off a couple of them just because I like that crisp white on the bigger shapes. And so yeah, that's it. That's pretty easy. Like both of these are cards that like you could do a few of them at a time. Like I wouldn't make like 100 of them, but if you have, you know, 15, 20 of them to make, and okay, maybe not that many, maybe like 10 of them, they would be fun to do, and you could have your kids help you too. So yeah, thanks guys. If you want to find out where you can get all of the supplies I used here, you can check out the description box below. And if you want to stay up to date on my YouTube channel, make sure you hit subscribe. And I'm also going to actually link to a couple of different blog posts where I have even more kind of fun artsy Christmas ideas for cards and tags and things like that. So thanks for watching everyone. I hope I'll see you next time. Bye.